start the meeting, please. If you could all take your seats.
I gave yours away. So
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah.
Let's start the meeting with the Pledge of Allegiance. If you'd all please stand. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, well, thank you. All right, I'd like to call the Planning Commission meeting of Wednesday, January 24th to order. I guess the first call this evening, Kathy, is for public comment. Do we have any public comment this evening?
Yes, we do. Mr. Tim Becker.
All right. Mr. Becker, if you would please say your name and address for the record.
Yes. Tim Becker, 15625 Canterbury Chase. Good evening, Planning Commission. I wanted to bring up 3 points tonight. The first point is I just want to congratulate and give my best wishes to the 2 new members of the Planning Commission. I've come to know both of these individuals over the last couple of years, and I think that they're going to be a great asset to the Planning Commission and also to the city. So thank you for your future service. The second thing is I wanted to thank the Planning Commission in general. You have consistently advocated for the interest of citizens, and you've worked hard to ensure that developers follow the rules in our city. Third, I wanted to highlight the recent election. In our recent election, citizens expressed dissatisfaction with the rampant and reckless development in Milton. 71% of voters voted in the District 2 election for an insurgent candidate over the incumbent. And that candidate ran on the platform of smart development in Milton. The District 1 candidate who ran unopposed shares the same views. Why am I mentioning this? Because you have a much more supportive City Council one now, and one that will listen to you and put more weight on your point of view. So this is an opportunity for you. I would take the opportunity. It's an opportunity to improve our land use policies, our land use processes, and our culture in the city around development. For the last 2 years, I have sat out here in the peanut gallery. I've attended probably over 200 meetings in the last 2 years. And I can tell you that often citizens do walk away feeling that the process is stacked against them. And you know this. And so we have an opportunity with a new council to support changes to development in Milton to make it more citizen-centric, to make it more rigorous, to make it more transparent, to make it more fair to citizens. I hope you will take that opportunity. I know that the 2 new council members are going to watch these proceedings either live or on video. So beware of that. Take advantage of council's support. And thanks again, and best wishes to council. And lastly, I just wanted to say there are a lot of citizens here tonight. Obviously, they're here for one or both of the preliminary plattings. And I just want to tell these citizens to keep more engaged. We have a tendency to come when it's something that's right next to our neighborhood. But the problem is at that point, it's almost too late, okay? So the secret in this city to smart development is citizens paying more attention before it's right on their doorstep. So I would encourage the citizens that are here tonight to, on a more consistent basis, follow what's going on with development in Milton and show up for other issues. Thank you.
Thank you. Any additional public comment?
No, there's not.
Then I move we will close public comment. So the next item on the agenda this evening is the approval of the action minutes from our December 13th Planning Commission meeting. May I have a motion?
I move we accept the Planning Commission action minutes of Wednesday, December the 13th.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay, is there any discussion? Okay, hearing none, all in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Okay, and minutes are approved. Now, the next item on the agenda this evening is the election of our officers. And so, Kathy, would you please conduct the election?
Yes, I'd be delighted to. Good evening, members of the Planning Commission, and congratulations to the two new members and to the reappointed member as well. This is for 2018, and we have two positions. The first is the chair, and then after that, we will vote for a vice chair. So I would like to open nominations up for the chairman of the Planning Commission.
I'd like to nominate Paul Moore.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Are there any other nominations? I would like a motion to close nominations then.
I make a motion to close the nomination for chair of the Planning Commission.
I have a second.
Second.
Second, I'm sorry.
I would like to propose the name of Paul Moore for chair of the Planning Commission. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Unanimously supported. Congratulations.
Thank you.
I would now like to open nominations for vice chair for the Planning Commission for 2018.
I'd like to nominate Mark Bittner for the vice chairman's position.
May I have a second for that?
I'll second that.
Are there any other nominations?
I'd like to nominate Ron Gilbert.
May I have a second for that?
Second.
Okay, thank you. I would now like to, are there any other nominations? If not, I would like a motion to close nominations.
I move we close nominations.
May I have a second?
Second.
Thank you. So I will pose each name and then would ask for you to vote for each name in order. So I will start with the first, which is Mark Bittner. All in favor, please raise your hand so we have a clarified vote. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. All in favor for Ron? Okay. I would like to congratulate Mark Bittner. You are the new vice chair for the Planning Commission. Thank you.
Thank you, Kathy. I, too, would like to take a minute and just welcome our two newest members. Heather Sparks comes to us with some significant background in both planning and the Planning Commission, so we welcome you and look forward to your service. And Ron Gilbert, who is Laura Bentley's appointee to the Planning Commission. Ron has got a very distinguished career in finance and will bring a wonderful addition to the Planning Commission. So welcome and congratulations to you both. We look forward to your service. And also thank you to you all for my appointment to the chair. I really appreciate that. Thank you. So Kathy, I guess the next item on the agenda this evening is the preliminary plats.
That is correct.
And in doing so, I need to read an opening statement, please. The Planning Commission is tasked by the city's subdivision ordinance to conduct a public hearing on proposed preliminary plats that have been found to be complete by the Community Development Department. At the conclusion of the public hearing, the Planning Commission is required to review the proposed preliminary plat and provide comments and make recommendations regarding the plat to the Community Development Director. The Planning Commission does not approve or reject the proposed preliminary plat, but merely provides comments or recommendations based on the public hearing and the Planning Commission's review of the proposed preliminary plat. So, thank you. So, Kathy, if you would please introduce the first plat for review.
Trying to get the display so you all can see it.
Okay.
Oh, okay. Getting there. Sorry. your,
No.
is it on?
Although we're not necessarily
Can you
on.
just turn on the actual
Is it lower right?
monitor?
If your blue light's not on, lower right-hand corner button.
It's the on button. I did figure that out the last time.
I didn't realize that was actually this one.
Monitors. We're just too advanced here, so.
Yes, for old people.
Speak for
Okay.
yourself.
Now we got everything together. So our first item for the preliminary plat is Greystone Lake proposed development. And here's an aerial location map of the property of Thompson Road. Currently, it's owned by Greystone Lakes LLC, Bob Negrelli. It's approximately 10.92 acres in size and undeveloped with no structures on it. The proposal's for 7 single-family lots at 0.64 units per acre and is currently zoned AG1. You have before you a revised site plan that we've been working with the developer since last week. Some suggestions from adjacent residents, and so now there is the entrance road is bisected with a stand of specimen trees. There's a detention pond toward the back with just a direct access easement, and then the 7 lots for development. So the applicant and/or his engineer is here to make any other further comments, and then we'll take comments from the public, and then we'll be able to address them, whether it's staff or the applicant, as well as you all can obviously ask your questions or make your comments. So,
Great.
okay?
Thanks, Robin. All right, so if we'd ask the developer. Anyone who's choosing to speak this evening on your behalf, would you please state your name and address for the record, please?
Brian
And I have
King,
their-
Engineering 303. Address is 116 North Main Street, Cumming, Georgia. We're here tonight to present a 7-lot subdivision. It's 7 lots on 10.92 acres. This will be, in full disclosure, the owner of this property also owns 2 5-acre lots that are in that are in Greystone Farms, and the intent is to gain access with a private driveway to access those 2 5-acre lots in Phase 2. And yeah, we have had numerous conversations with staff and with the adjacent homeowners. We've tried to honor their concerns with saving as many of the specimen trees, and the suggestion was to do a divided entrance, and that's the plan that we have come up with. At this point in time, any questions, we'd love to try and answer them.
Okay, thank you.
Do you want me to go ahead and call up the different speakers?
Yes, please.
And if in the meantime anybody else has come in and wants to speak, and if you need to give me a yellow card, just feel free to bring it up as we're coming. The first speaker is Diana Wheeler.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the Planning Commission. My name is Diana Wheeler. I live at 2180 Country Ridge Road in the Country Ridge subdivision. I'm here this evening with many of my neighbors. I'm also here with neighbors from the Potterstone subdivision. Together, we are the 2 subdivisions that are most impacted by this proposal. We are to the north and to the south of this particular piece of property. First, I want to say thank you very much to the planning staff. They have been amazing to work with. You are very, very blessed to have these folks working for you. They have done an incredible job. They were available to us. They have worked with us, and as a result, the plan you see this evening is significantly different from the one we originally saw. Our neighborhoods have met, and we've had a lot of discussions. Obviously, we're very concerned about the impact that this subdivision would have on our quality of lives and also on the character of our Milton neighborhoods, because they're very unique, they're very special, a lot of open space, a lot of trees, and we want to try to preserve that Milton character that we currently enjoy and have for many years with this new subdivision. I'm happy to report that after meeting several times, a lot of our neighbors are in full support of this proposal, but it's subject to several conditions, and I want to share those with you this evening. I've distributed copies, and you have that before you. But very briefly, I want to go over these. First is that the subdivision road be reconfigured to save the specimen trees. We're happy to see this evening that, in fact, that has been done, and we're appreciative to the developer for listening to our concerns. Obviously, trees are very important in Milton. They're very important to us. And the road, as originally configured in the first version of this plat, showed the road going right through all of the oak trees that are on that property, all the major oak trees. They've redesigned the road, and we appreciate that. The second thing, in terms of keeping trees, we would like to have a 50-foot undisturbed buffer along the northern, southern property lines between our neighborhoods because we feel that that's going to provide us with the protection that we need between these two subdivisions. However, if an undisturbed buffer is not acceptable to the developer, we would be agreeable to having a double staggered row of cryptomeria trees, those are evergreen trees, provided along the northern and southern property lines and around the detention pond. Cryptomeria trees to be 8 to 10 feet tall at installation, spaced 25 feet on center, and we feel that will provide us with a buffer if the undisturbed buffer cannot be provided. We would also like a 4-board horse fence along the northern, southern, and western property lines. We would also like the developer to establish architectural standards for the subdivision that require homes to be built in a traditional style, utilizing high-quality materials. This is a traditional area. We're not really supportive of very contemporary or different types of homes. We believe that's what the developer's intent is. We would like, once those standards are established, for copies to be distributed to Country Ridge Homeowners Association and the Potterstone Homeowners Association. We would also like construction hours to be limited to weekdays, no weekend construction. Most of us work, and we are entitled, we feel, having been there many years, to the quiet enjoyment of our backyards on Saturday and Sunday. Of course, Sunday construction is not allowed in Milton, but we would appreciate not having construction during Saturday as well. There are 7 homes here. They're going to be expensive homes. We know that. We appreciate that. But it will take potentially 2 to 3 years to build out. We really don't want to have the next 2 or 3 years' worth of weekends taken up by a lot of noise. And finally, it's very important to us, and we appreciate the fact that the developer has removed that 20-foot access easement that was shown on the plat originally. That access easement that went from the cul-de-sac to that extension portion nearby the creek was intended, as was mentioned, as an access to property that's not part of this plat, and we felt it was inappropriate to show an access to a development that is not up for consideration this evening, but will be in the future if that is what the developer would like to do. At the time that he brings forward that plat, we will have an opportunity to speak on that. We certainly have very strong opinions on that road, and we'll share those with you at that time. And if, in fact, that plat is approved, then this plat can be amended to show that road, but that's a discussion for another day. In the meantime, we want to thank the developer, his engineers, for the hard work that they've done to meet us on these conditions, and we look forward to working with them a little further because there are still a few more things that we would like for them to consider. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay. The next speaker is Carl Heideck. And I'd be happy, while he gets out, we do have full-size plans. I don't want them to go to waste what the app has brought. So he
Okay, good evening. My name is Carl Heidick. I live at 790 Scotlandwell Place in Potterstone subdivision. And we've actually been there we're in our 20th year. So we've been here for quite some time in the city of Milton. And my comments tonight to the commission are specific to site safety as it relates to Thompson Road. As you review the plans as submitted, and as you may know, Thompson Road over the last 20 years has seen an increased amount of volume in traffic, and also the speed and rate of travel at which cars do drive on Thompson Road can be higher than what is posted at 45 miles an hour. And it's not uncommon to see cars travel 60 to 65 miles an hour on this stretch of road because it is a cut-through, in effect, a connector between Red Road and Hopewell Road, and people do use this road early in the morning to and from work as a cut-through as a means to avoid traffic. In addition to that, there is a fire station, a Milton Fire Station, on this section of Thompson Road. So it also does serve the community, the greater community, for emergency services. And considering these 2 points, we would like you to consider the mandate or the requirement of a deceleration lane to be added to the design and the plot for this new subdivision. And would like you to consider that all the other subdivisions that have been added on Thompson Road in the past 20 years have included deceleration lanes for safety purposes. There are at least 9 neighborhoods, and as I become aware tonight, this neighborhood of 7 homes has a vision, and it was presented by the engineer that there is a phase 2 that is in discussion, which would make these 7 lots to be greater than that. So please consider that the number of lots could be expanded. If it's 2 5-acre, that's the potential of 10 additional, perhaps, homes attached to this neighborhood in the future. And with that in consideration, I'd like to propose that you require a deceleration lane to be added into this design. Thank you.
Thank you.
The next speaker is Victor Fetz.
Good evening, Planning Commission. My name is Victor Fettis. I live at 451 Kelton Hill Court. That is in the Potterstone subdivision, and it is also immediately downstream when you look at this plat from the runoff area. And if you look at Seagraves Lake, there is an inlet on Seagraves Lake. That inlet happens to be my backyard. So my primary concern with this new subdivision is the flooding that we are already seeing on Seagraves Lake. I noticed on the plat that they are showing the estimated 100-year floodplain at 987 feet of elevation. Over the last 6 years, as I have lived in my home, which we bought 6 years ago, I have noticed a steady increase in the number of flooding events that we see. I have a floodplain down at the bottom of my lot that borders the lake, and then a significant hill that goes up toward my home. In the last 3 years, we have seen the water up halfway up our hill already. So I'm concerned, and I would like to make sure that the proposed stormwater management facility that is on the plat is adequate to hold the large amounts of rain that we're seeing with the impervious surfaces that will be added into this subdivision, so that we are not adding to our already significant flooding problem on Seagraves Lake. So my request is that we conduct a study, that a study be conducted to ensure that the stormwater management facility will be able to hold the necessary amount of water given the size of the homes and the other impervious surfaces that we'll be adding, and will not add to our flooding problem downstream in Seagraves Lake. Thank you, and have a good evening.
Thank you.
The next speaker is Richard Schmidt.
Good evening. My name is Richard Schmidt. I live at 441 Carlton Hill Court in Potterstone Subdivision. I have some concerns on this development by an out-of-state LLC developer. The past development in Greystone resulted in dramatic changes to Seagraves Lake, mostly due to storm drainage runoff. Silt buildup at the east end of the lake has reduced the water level to 2 feet or less. The west side of the lake routinely floods and is also getting shallower. It appears that there's not been any real regard for environmental impact on the original proposal, and I've had a brief period of time earlier to look at the new one. It may or may not address some of these issues. If this project were to be approved, our concern would be the ability of the city or its residents to pursue recourse for the developer's failure to perform. Because of this, I believe the developer must be required to post a performance bond to protect the interest of our beautiful community. Thank you.
Thank you.
The next speaker is Donna Matiska Johnson.
Can you put the aerial view up for mine? Thank you. Good evening. My name is Donna Matiska Johnson, and I live at 115 Canongate Kirk Circle, which is in Potterstone, and it's not contiguous to this development, but it is on the lake. And so my comments sort of follow on what Victor has said and what a few other people have said. We've lived here for 16 years in this house. My husband bought this house. I don't think he would have cared what the house looked like. He saw the lake. It didn't matter. We have 4 kids. It could have been a 2-bedroom house, and he was going to buy it. So we bought this house basically for the lake. And as I was trying to do a little bit of research to see what Milton requires and what we stand for now as a city, I found this, and I thought that it was very interesting. This lake embodies the part of Milton's comprehensive plan, which states, the overall objectives of the city's wildlife habitat project are to increase awareness and to conserve wildlife habitats by both the city and its residents. These objectives are consistent with preservation of our natural resources and are ongoing. The city encourages people to have their homes certified as a national wildlife habitat, which we have done with our house, partially because the lake allows us that. Seagraves Lake is home to at least 10 different kinds of ducks, geese. We have a nesting pair of great blue herons. We have a pair of kingfishers. We have beavers. We have river otters. You name it, we have it. And so my concern is preserving this lake. Since Greystone Farms was built, as was alluded or spoken about before, our lake floods like it never flooded before. There are no retention ponds in that entire subdivision of Greystone Farms, so all of their surface water flows directly into our lake, which has caused some really phenomenal flooding. I went down to the lake today with an altimeter, and I measured at regular pool, it sits at 981, and we have had flooding that has brought the level up to 993, which when you look at your maps, that's really close to where their new proposed retention pond is. So my concern is with the retention pond itself. We feel like it needs to be moved farther away from the lake surface. We feel like it needs to be raised to a little bit of higher elevation so that it can contain the flood water and the surface water. And also the type of retention ponds. I am not an engineer. I understand that there are several different types of retention ponds. What we are asking for is a retention pond that actually would hold the water and then let it slowly filter out and back into the lake instead of just being sort of a go-through, like a bathtub that just lets it go back out. We just can't take any more flooding in our lake, and it doesn't suit anybody to have the lake continue to fill in and all those things. So that is what I am proposing and asking for in this plan, and I thank you for your time.
Great, thank you.
The next speaker is Beth Wardak.
Good evening, Planning Commission. Thank you for letting me speak tonight. I'm definitely not a speech giver. I'm a nurse and I take care of moms and babies, so this is a little out of my element. I just wanted to speak tonight on what I feel is really important, which is the actual proposed developed area here, Greystone Lake, that would be. That's my background, or my backyard, I should say. I live at 462 Calton Hill Court, and I'm proud to be a Potterstone resident and a Milton resident. My big concerns are for the actual habitat that live and have lived for years in the actual proposed Greystone Lake area. It is home to many, many beautiful deer, wild turkey, beaver, raccoons, eagles. We have a line of 30-foot mature oak and pine trees back there that support these eagles and other wildlife. I feel that not only would they be misplaced, that would be destroyed for them. And we have such a limited amount of these green areas, and Milton is representative of green space. And so I would really ask that you consider what the potential harm is and would be to these wonderful, beautiful animals and habitat that do live and have lived in this area of Greystone, of the proposed Greystone Lake. So thank you for your time.
Thank you.
The next speaker is Kim Gogger.
Good evening. My name is Kim Gogger. I live at 422 Calton Hill Court, which is actually lot number 4 behind the proposed Greystone Lake subdivision. And I want to thank you, first of all, for your time tonight, and also maybe provide a point of clarification. Ms. Wheeler, who was the first speaker, although she does represent our neighboring Country Ridge, the first time we met her was last night. And obviously, since there are so many Potterstone subdivision homeowners here tonight, our concerns have not yet been expressed either to the city or to Mr. Negrelli. So we thank you so much for considering these concerns, hearing our concerns tonight. There are 2 main areas I'd like to address. The first is in the 2016 comprehensive plan. Milton made it so clear that it was very important to maintain the rural and agricultural or equestrian nature of the center of Milton that we are in, which is called the Milton or the Center Milton Planning District. Many of you were on that committee, and I thank you so much for your service. I know that you know these words, but they're worth repeating. You had indicated that new development should match the typical densities found within this area and should minimize undesirable impacts on surrounding rural uses. Significant site features such as view sheds in environmentally sensitive areas should be enlisted as amenities that shape the identity and character of new developments. We hold on to that language and appreciate that language and would ask that you consider it when you're reviewing this development. Our area, as you know, is characterized by lots actually that are in excess of 1 acre. Potterstone's average lot size is 1.34 acres. The Greystone Lake proposed lot size is an average of 1.13 acres, which is actually 16% smaller than our lots. Additionally, Mr. Negrelli has indicated the desire to build 5,000 square foot homes on smaller lots. Accordingly, what we know is that these homes will be much closer together. Common sense tells us that reducing the number of lots on this proposed development would certainly create more uniformity with neighboring communities such as Potterstone, Country Ridge, and Greystone. I would like the Commission and the City to provide us with some assurances as the subdivision begins. Initially, of course, we would like to ask for a 50-foot undisturbed buffer, as we have so many enormous old oak oak trees, and their root system would certainly be compromised by development, even over the lot line. So a 50-foot buffer would certainly be a help to us. There are many specimen trees, including mine, that must be protected, and it hasn't been marked. And my tree is actually right on the lot line. I have called out the Milton arborists many times in the past to review the health of that tree, and they have indicated to me that it is very healthy. However, I think if you start messing with the roots over the lot line, that would be of great concern. We have gone back and forth on the issue of whether a planted buffer would be created, and I'm not sure from comments from Mr. Negrelli whether or not that would occur. We would also request this commission walk the land with us. It's unique. It's uniquely full of, as my neighbors have told you, many different specimens of trees and animals, and we would greatly appreciate the opportunity to show that to you in person. Additionally, we have had some past experiences with this developer, and they have been unfavorable. Our community has suffered from broken promises by this developer. We're requesting the city assist us in providing insurances. I understand a performance bond might be something that the city could use for recourse, but we would like to know what we as homeowners and lake property owners would have as recourse if these promises are not met. The final concern I would like to express pertains to the deceleration lane, as Mr. Heidick has shared with you. Thompson Road is actually traveled by a lot of people, school buses, even cyclists, and they are all traveling at a high rate of speed. It's also very hilly, and every other community on our street actually has deceleration lanes. I'm not sure where or when the deceleration lane requirement was waived. I would request a new traffic study in light of the additional development up and down the street, new parks, new schools, and a fire station nearby. I would appreciate if the city could tell us whether or not a traffic study has occurred, and then if we would have the opportunity to review that traffic study and also comment on it. I want to thank you for your time and for your consideration. I know we've thrown a lot at you tonight. We greatly appreciate your efforts. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
The next speaker is Chuck Sorkabal. Yes.
Good evening.
Excuse me. You want to go back to the lot?
Sure. There you go. Good evening. My name is Chuck Sorsable. I'm with Potterstone, 442 Calton Hill Court. We back up to the south part. If you look at the map, we're lot number 6. And I think the great thing about going last here is everything that I was going to say has been said, but that's okay. You're not going to get away that easily. My concern on our lot, there's a huge drop-off. And if you can look at the contour lines, it really doesn't show the drop into the lot that's going to be behind us. Now, with the new plat, it is just one lot now. Previously, it was two different lots. So my concern is definitely the runoff into the neighbor down below me. They are pretty far down. Right at the property line there's been a creek that has been developed from water that's at least, we've only been there a year. We moved into the state of Georgia, and we're really enjoying it, and moved to Milton because of the accessibility to a planning commission. Where I came from, you really didn't get that. So I appreciate this. But the creek is now, I call it a creek, but it's because I'm from the city, but it's 3 feet deep already, and which means there's a lot of water that goes down. If you'll look at the lot, we're number 6. That creek will run in and out of the property lines all the way down to 6, 7, 8, all the way down to lot 8. That is not even on the plans. And part of it will be on their property, and part of it will be on our property. I'd just like to see someone come out, take a look at that, and see how that's going to be addressed, because it's not addressed at the plat level. The other thing is of course, the trees and how they're going to grade. At this point, we don't know that. We don't see a grading plan of how these lots are going to be graded down below. Are they going to tear out all the trees? Are they going to clear cut? And I'm worried, like Kim, that the canopy of our trees will be affected, the root systems, by the actual grading down below us. I'm really concerned with that. We have several specimen trees that I consider larger than 27 inches in diameter that should be considered, not only on our property, but just over the line on the property that's going to be developed. I'm not against the development. I just want to make sure that it's right. What I'd like to do is invite you to come out here, come out to our Potterstone, walk the property with us. Talk and see, look down and see that elevation drop. See how all that is going to go down into the lake. Take a look. I mean, it's very easy to look at a plot and listen to people talk about the plat, but it's a different thing when you stand there and look at it. So please come out and see us. We'll welcome you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
The next speaker is Francia Linden.
Good evening. My name is Francia Linden. I live at 14810 East Bluff Road in North Valley. That is across the street, across Thompson from the development that's going in. I've lived at this address for the last 22 years, and I can tell you that that property has not always been vacant. There was a house on it and other outbuildings, and my recollection is that the owner, the original owner, was doing auto repair work on that lot. And I have no way of knowing for sure, but the rumor was that he was depositing acid batteries and other toxic chemicals in the back of his property. And I want to know if the Planning Commission or anybody is going to require any kind of environmental study to test the soils to be sure that they aren't in some way contaminated. And the second point I want to make is that this same property came up for consideration with the Planning Board and the Zoning Board of Appeals in 2008. The layout for the lots was virtually the same. I don't have all of the details on the Zoning Board of Appeals, but the case number, the petition number was V08-035, and that request for a variance involved crossing the stream exactly where the proposed future driveways are, and it had gone through a lot of process with the Army Corps of Engineers, and I think that you need to go back and look at those original requests. There was also a requested variance to minimize some of the buffers in the original proposals, and that may come up again, but I think you need to be aware of those issues that came up in 2008. Thank you.
Thank you.
That is all the comments that we have right now, so
Okay.
if the applicant wants to come up and try to address some of the issues or answer questions, he's more than welcome.
This is Brian King, Engineering 303. I think one of the comments that I heard was that they were afraid that we might add phase 2 would be more lots. There are 2 additional lots that we could potentially gain access to. So it would be a 10-acre addition to the development. So, but it would be restricted to 2 lots.
You need to speak into the mic so we
Sorry.
can pick it up, okay? So you have to face them.
Okay.
We're going to put you back up on the screen. So.
Yeah, so the concern that I heard was that in accessing the additional 10 acres, that there would be additional lots added. It is 2 additional lots, which would be a total of 9 lots for the development. Other concerns, a little concerned at this point in time, and it is really early to restrict the property with undisturbed buffers around the perimeter, because we will be subject to Fulton County Health Department approval, and with a 50-foot restriction, that's going to limit us on where we can place our septic lines. The detention will be in full compliance with the current regulations for the City of Milton. It will be designed to store the 100-year, and we will work diligently with planning and staff to make sure we address all concerns with detention and water quality. The comments about a decel lane, don't believe that a decel lane is warranted based on a total of 9 lots, but we'll work with transportation and see what their comments are. I believe the concept meetings that we had, that was not a concern based on a total of 9 lots. And this moment, Zach, do you have anything to add? Could introduce Zach Truelove. He's our resident hydrologist.
My name's Zach Truelove. I'm with Engineering 303, 116 North Main Street, Cumming, Georgia. Zach Truelove. I'm with Engineering 303, 116 North Main Street, Cumming, Georgia. And I just will go on with what Brian said, but I'd just like to reserve my time for questions.
Okay. Is that close?
It's not really a public hearing.
Yeah,
but
it's not, it doesn't really. I guess we need to talk about the process for a minute. You know, just so that the community understands the expectations of this evening, and both from the Planning Commission staff and the developer. This meeting, to a great extent, takes the place of what used to be a CZIM meeting, a Community Zoning Information meeting. And what we found over the past several years was that that meeting was typically not very well attended. Oftentimes, those meetings were held in closer proximity to the parcel under consideration, and oftentimes the meeting space was not necessarily conducive to an environment like this, where you can have a chance for a healthy opportunity to hear the concerns and foster the kind of communication exchange that you would hope would be heard. The way this is structured at this point is for us to have a chance to hear the voice of the community, and I applaud all of you for coming out this evening to do so. This is probably one of the better attended I've ever seen, and although we have not had that many of them, I think that you guys all came well prepared, and we appreciate your comments. Staff has heard those comments, as have we. We also have a chance to ask the developer some of the same questions and concerns that we have generated as a result of our preparation for this evening, so we'll have a chance for staff and the developer to hear those. There isn't a vote this evening, and it's actually for the purpose of hearing the concerns. It then gives staff the opportunity to take those concerns back to the future meetings that they'll have with the developer. If there are considerations that warrant action by the city, they will certainly take those steps to ensure that those areas of concerns that have either popped up through your bringing them to us this evening, or things that staff too is measuring as a result of the conversations tonight, those will be brought forward for the developer to consider before it's finally approved. Have I left anything out, Kathy or Robin?
No.
Okay, so I think the next step at this point is for us as a Planning Commission to engage in some questions that we've got as well, either for staff or for the developer. So I open the table for discussion from our Planning Commission members. Any questions?
Mr. Chair, if I may make just a couple of comments about some of the comments that I did hear from the speakers tonight, just to assure them in terms of detention and runoff issues. We do require, once this preliminary plat is approved, the next part of the process is that a significant amount of documentation relating to a land disturbance permit is required for submission by the applicant. And at that time, the applicant will need to submit significant hydrology studies to ensure that their stormwater will stay on the property. By law, it must stay on the property. They are responsible for it. So we need to look at volumes and runoff and topo and all those issues. And we do have an engineer on staff who is charged with reviewing all those plans and certifying indeed that that stormwater submission is valid. In addition, let me just talk about the decel lane, if I may. We did review that, and because it is just a 7 lot, it doesn't really meet the threshold for a decel lane. In addition, the City Council has asked us to be very judicious in terms of building out any further decel lanes, because they are concerned that we maintain a rural look on our roads. And with the addition of decel lanes, you suburbanize, if I can use that term, the roads in a way that is not something in keeping with the image that the council would like us to maintain. So we are very judicious in where we do decel lanes, but I will tell you in addition that the transportation engineer requires a threshold after which there is a transportation study done to show whether there is a need or not. But at the 7 lot number, it's much below the threshold that would be required for a transportation study. Okay, so those are just some general comments. I just wanted to, yes?
Let me ask you, excuse me, Kathy, at the bottom of the plan, it speaks of this floodplain differential. Is that what you say our study by our people going to be trying to answer the question relative to this fluctuation that happens at the lake? I happen to live or have a property on a lake, and I'm very much aware of the change, particularly in silt, that comes into the lake. So I think that point certainly needs to be studied very deeply with the amount of proposed stormwater runoff.
Right.
Both, and that's also for the person who spoke about the large drop with the water.
Right.
Is another point. And my last point was Ms. Linden spoke of the toxic possibilities. Have we yet or have in our plan to determine that there isn't 40 junk cars piled on this lot?
We have not heard that, and I think perhaps I'd like to call the applicant up or his representative to speak to that issue, because I did hear from Ms. Linden earlier in the week about that, and so I think it's most appropriate if you would come up or the owner to talk about that, please.
Thank you, Kathy. Yeah, at this point in time, we have no knowledge of that. However, if once we go to construction, we do discover any buried debris, toxins, they'll be cleaned up at that point in time. I mean, it's to go do an environmental assessment for the property at this point in time, I don't think is warranted. We have looked at it for soil suitabilities, so we do have perk tests and soils boring data. None of that found anything. We do have an area that was marked as a potential fill area where the house was demolished, and we have called for a further investigation of that area. The report is not in on that at this point in time. If we do find anything, it will be cleaned up appropriately, and we'll meet all of the city's requirements for that cleanup.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
But you will note that, Kathy, that
yes,
brought in.
I certainly will.
That's all I have right now.
Great. Thank you, Fred. Smeet, anything?
Well, I just had a question about the comment on the plat, Brian, about number 4, where it said no sidewalks required along Thompson Road, and you guys may opt to terminate the sidewalk at Gate. Could you elaborate on that?
Yeah.
On our initial submittal, we're showing sidewalk connectivity from the internal sidewalk to the subdivision out to the existing sidewalk on Thompson Road. A comment we received from staff was that no sidewalk was required. That one's when we were still looking at a curb and gutter and sidewalk proposed improvement. That note was left over from that. Since we did the iteration, we're looking at more of a rural section now. So with that, the intent of that note was to give the developer the option to connect to the sidewalk on Thompson Road, even though it's not required, just for accessibility and aesthetics.
So there may be one?
Potentially, but if we go to a rural section, it's not likely.
Actually, in keeping with that, Kathy, has the...
Ask them to delete the curb and the sidewalk to maintain the rural look.
And in that particular area, does our code still require sidewalk there? And if so, does that relinquishment of that responsibility then promote the developer to contribute to our trails and connectivity plans?
Well, this is an interior road, don't forget. The trails are on the exterior roads. Right. So the trail, they would not be contributing to the trail on the exterior road.
Okay.
But in terms of the sidewalks on the interior...
Yeah, they can request, and we've, as noted, staff has asked them to delete the sidewalk for such a small subdivision, so that's allowed in the code.
Okay, great, thank you. Smeet, any other questions?
The only other question I had was about the comment about potentially, I think there may be a tree right on the border above Lot 4. So is that been, I know it's not noted on this plat, but how is that taken into consideration with LDP?
Yeah, so that'll be addressed more specifically at LDP. So we look at we have a certain area that we go past the property line because we understand there can be trees that are impacted by the development, even though it's not physically on it, like the property owner mentioned, the drip line, as well as our arborists would go out and look at the different specimen trees. And so it's noted on the plans, and there would be a tree protection plan made to help protect that tree in the back, especially since it's in the back. There should be no development. So we would make sure that that is protected as much as possible.
Yeah, but the much more detailed tree plan is part of the submission for the land disturbance permit. So where they've sort of noted the specimen on this is really just a more conceptual iteration. The very detailed one will be part of the submission with the LDP.
Okay, anything else? Okay, Heather, any questions?
I had a couple questions just on lot configuration, particularly on lot number 1. It's a triangular piece, and I want to make sure that there's enough buildable area that the builder will not be, just to mitigate the chance of a variance request. And then the lot line between lots 6 and 7 kind of has a crook in it. I didn't know if there was a reason for that or if it could be straightened out just for ease of, when people are living there to identify their lot lines.
Let me just address those real quick.
Sure.
When we looked at putting in the divided entrance to save the trees, we have a 1 acre minimum lot size. Mm-hmm. So in order to meet those you can see that we hit 1 acre, 1 acre, 1 acre. We had to be creative with the geometry for the lots in order to meet that 1 acre threshold. And since this is a preliminary plat, it is still very conceptual in nature. Once we do the septic design, which will be part of the land disturbance permit documents, we'll further be looking at that for impact critical root zones, septic location, where the good soils are, bad soils, all of that. And at that point in time, there could be a minor adjustment to lot lines if required. But we'll work with staff on all of that.
I'll go ahead and make a comment regarding Mrs. Sparks' comment about the triangle. I believe that number 1 would end up being a triangle lot. Therefore, you could have no rear, and it would be a 25-foot setback that would allow you some more room for location. So
Yeah, and our preliminary layouts, we put some pretty significant footprints on here just to make sure that they were, and we believe that we can meet the threshold for the developer.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any additional questions?
That was all I had.
Okay, Mark, any questions?
Let me go back, Kathy, to this, I don't know, small point, and I'd like to hear from the audience on the sidewalk. I know we've bounced back and forth on with the tree canopy now and so forth, but is there sidewalk at the present time on either side of this property? Is there excuse me, sidewalk? And if there is, now we're again back to not making continuity for people to walk. And I think that it should be in here, if there's sidewalks on both sides, that they should have to have a sidewalk.
So there is an existing, so as you can tell, there's a bizarre little configuration, I believe, with Potterstone. So they have like a triangular arm that comes and does the frontage along much of their property. So there is a sidewalk there that goes up near to what would be their entrance.
That's on Thompson.
On Thompson,
On
right.
Thompson.
Yeah, that's what I meant. On the exterior. There is a existing sidewalk, but it technically was built by Potterstone. But are you speaking of the interior?
No,
just the exterior. Okay.
On Thompson Road. Because at the top, excuse me, at the top it says no sidewalks required along Thompson Road. And then developer may opt to terminate sidewalk. So are we saying that there is or there isn't going to be a sidewalk? I'm not clear.
What the council, as Kathy mentioned before, is that we want to try to preserve the rural view shed, try to keep it as natural as possible, and to not add additional sidewalks. There are exceptions where if it's a quarter mile within within distance of a school or a park. But this does not meet that threshold and therefore is not required. So.
Thank you. Kevin?
Yeah, we haven't heard from the developer in terms of the fencing around it, and I don't know if you want to get clarification about where the four-board fence would be and not be. I know I did hear from some of the neighbors in terms of their thoughts, and I thought maybe that would be something. It hasn't really been brought up, but it would be helpful to have clarification on that.
Okay.
Is Brian Tig again? Yeah, we have no objection. In fact, we would really encourage the fencing and have no objection to including the fencing around the perimeter of the property. And so north property line, south property line, and east property line. So, I mean, it'll provide, fences create good neighbors, so.
I'm sorry, just clarify, north property line, south property line, and
Eastern property line. So basically, we'll surround all of the property with fencing.
okay. My orientation may be wrong. Is the lake not on the eastern end of the property?
The lake is to the southeast.
Okay, so would it not be then appropriate to have the fencing on Thompson Road, which would be the western boundary?
We can place fencing there if so desired.
Okay.
I think that the questions were really concerning the northern property and the southern property lines. We'll also have fencing requirements for the detention and water quality bond also. So they'll all be met.
Okay.
Well, to that point, Kathy, aren't they required to have the floorboard on Thompson Road?
They would. If a fence is constructed, it must be four-board. It doesn't say they have to have a four-board fence.
And it would really depend upon what the view shed is like
Right.
there. You don't want to be necessarily constructing one if it's a natural view shed there that would be diminished by a four-board fence. Okay, yeah, as long as that is measured, I think that would meet the community's expectations. Okay, Chris, any questions this evening?
Nothing additional.
Okay, Ron?
No, thanks.
Thank you. I have a couple of questions. I think I heard the developer suggested perk tests have already been done. So has it been confirmed that the yield for this at this point, based on perk test and the proposed placement of the homes, that it would actually yield 7 properties at this point?
At this point in time, we have done the perk tests. The soils data supports the development of 7 lots. We are investigating, I believe it's lot 5. There was one area that was found to have fill in there, and we've asked, we're working with Sam Asadi Geoscience to further investigate that area and see if we can do some select fill to make it more suitable.
And that is approximately where the homestead was before, you said?
Correct. As best we can determine, that's the area where that homestead was.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
I've got some more questions. There was a lot of concern about the hydrology with the stormwater retention and the potential impact on the lake, and I certainly appreciate the community's concern about that, especially if those homeowners who have been there for quite a period of time have experienced a significant amount of flooding. I guess this is a question for both of you, for both you and for staff. Staff does require a pretty comprehensive hydrology study. Has that, at this point, been done in concert with the developer, or that comes at a later point in time?
That will come after this. It will be part of the land disturbance permit documentation requirement.
Okay. So at that point in time, the community's concerns for either larger or raised heights or potential replacement or placement in a different location would be addressed by staff?
That is correct.
Okay, thank you. Just a comment for the community that I know that when we've spoken with transportation in the past, there is some debate about the value to a decel or accel lane when, especially dealing with smaller subdivisions, that there is a minimum threshold that's required. And there is still some debate as to whether it's actually traffic calming or not, in the fact that if you do move those vehicles into a decel lane, you're actually not breaking the speed of the vehicles that are then going by. So just ask that you consider that as you measure the value of an accel or a decel lane when you're talking to the developer about that.
I would completely agree with that. We're doing a lot of studies with low-impact development communities, and the whole idea is to narrow the travel lanes to eliminate decel lanes because, like you said, it gives somebody the ability to pass a car with limited sight because they can't see what's coming from the right-hand side. And we would discourage a decel lane.
Okay, thank you. Can you comment on the area that's noted common area? Is that intended to be green space or developed area?
That will all be part of the stormwater management facility. It could be incorporated as passive common area.
Okay, and do you know what the total acreage is of that proposed common area and water detention area?
We made so many changes in the last 24 hours that unfortunately I don't have that number.
And probably
it's a little bit
in excess
over,
of a couple of acres at least?
I would say it's approximately 2.5 acres.
Okay. And can you point out for me, I don't recall seeing it when I was looking at it, where the additional access points are being contemplated for the future phase 2, I think is referred to?
What we propose is to do an access driveway along the property line of Lot 4, and what we'll do is we wanted to make it a long meandering driveway to come down that slope, and then along the southern property line, and then you'll see a little notch that's 40 feet wide. We're looking at the potential of building a small bridge for fire and emergency access for those 2 lots.
So Okay, thank you for pointing that out. And that would access then both of the other lots, the two
Correct.
separate 5-acre lots?
Correct.
So a question for staff is, and those lots are part of Greystone or Potterstone?
They are currently part of Greystone Farms.
And they were platted as a part of Greystone Farms?
Platted as Greystone Farms. They are landlocked due to the lake, but back during the development of that process, or the development of that subdivision, Fulton County required those lots to be platted as part of it. They couldn't be left as outlots. At this point, it is our goal to see if we can get them released from Greystone Farms. However, if they're not released from Greystone Farms, we will, those lots will still maintain membership to the HOA over there, but would just basically have a rear access from the new development.
Okay. So a question for staff. Does that kind of hypothetical future development pose any concerns to you when we're platting this? What would the process be for future consideration? Is that then a variance based on setbacks, or is it not a variance based on the fact that it's contemplated within this platting? How does that work?
I mean, we would ask them to come back to do a revision of the plat, of the preliminary plat, so that it could be shown to the public that when and if it's ever released from Greystone Farms, that they would bring it into part of their subdivision. So, and then they do, again, it would have to be looked at as far as the issues with the variances across the stream. I'm not totally familiar with the case from 2008, whether that was approved or denied or what position. So we'll be looking at that very closely at whatever point they decide to pursue that scenario. So.
Okay. All right. Thank you. And Robin and Kathy, the specimen trees that are noted, anything that is removed, the developer's already been advised of the requirement for recompense on those that are
Right,
removed.
and we would calculate that at the appropriate time. Yes.
Okay, thank you. This is the first time I've seen the mail kiosk placed this deep in a development. Does that meet the current postal requirements? It does. I thought it had to be at the front of the subdivision.
As it would meet it based on there just has to be a gained mailbox. It doesn't indicate exactly where it has to be. So, yeah.
And sort of defeats the purpose of the postal requirements to try to reduce their travel distances when you put it in the.
It would save them time from stopping at everyone, I
Right.
suspect. But yeah.
Okay. All right. Thank you. So I guess, are there any other questions that pop to mind for anybody before we bring closure?
I just had a couple based on the first comments that we had, Brian, so I just wanted to get your thoughts on that. I know there was one comment from the residents of Country Ridge and Potterstone about the development style of the houses. Could you speak on that, on how the development's going to be on these houses, what kind of style?
At this point in time, I believe it's the intention to build in the neighborhood of about a 5,000 square foot. Bob has commented that they would be very similar in nature to his former development of Greystone Farms. So there'll be a traditional house. I don't believe there's any demand for contemporary, but I don't foresee that.
And what's the, based on the current timeline that you have proposed to this, what do you think the build-out time from initiation to completion would be?
Well, I listened to the news on my way over here, and they said the lot takedown is that the only reason that construction numbers were down is because there's no lots available. I believe the takedown on these will be probably a year and a half. I mean, it's custom homes in Milton, probably one of the most sought-after addresses in this area. I mean, in the heart of Milton, Alpharetta, on 1 acre, close to a lake. takedown's going to be pretty quick. We haven't done any official studies at this point in time, but we're only looking at 7 lots plus an additional 2.
Okay. In the presentation made by our first speaker this evening, I think it was Ms. Wheeler, my takeaway from that presentation was there were a number of commitments that appeared to have already been made from the developer to her or to the group of people that she was working with. I mean, and you haven't had a chance really to respond to that, so at least she listed things such as a 50-foot undisturbed buffer. I think you did address that. You said that it couldn't necessarily meet that requirement. The 4-board fence, architectural standards, restriction of construction on the weekends, and her concern over the 20-foot access easement for the Phase 2. Are you, other than the ones that you've already addressed, the 50-foot setback and the architectural standards, are you prepared to meet some of the things that she's represented this evening as agreements?
I believe we're very close. I don't know about the commitment on the restricting construction on a Saturday. I mean, I would prefer that we not have that. We could look at certain types of construction, but if it's interior finish, if it's painting, if it's not a noise-generating construction activity, I think that's a pretty harsh restriction, being that all other developments are allowed to work on a Saturday. And with
you
weather
would have
delays,
to be compliant with the Milton noise ordinance as well.
Correct.
So,
yeah.
Okay. All right. Any other questions? All right. Again, for the benefit of the community, just to make sure you understand, tonight the Planning Commission is here to basically foster the exchange that's taken place. Any discussion that we have either with staff or with the developer is not binding. It's a recommendation from us at this point. I think that we've heard a good representation of the community's thoughts and concerns this evening. We would propose, or at least offer to the developer, that you please give those serious consideration. It appears you have been engaged with the community. Encourage you to continue to do so. We would ask that staff continue to address the concerns expressed by the community. I heard several, and just to recap some of them. A traffic study based on the speeds that have been represented on Thompson Road, the buffer area and the specimen trees, some of those that have been called into question in terms of their placement on the property lines, the hydrology questions that come into mind based on the firsthand experience of some of the homeowners about some of the flooding that they're experiencing. That's not noted on here, but the additional creek that is forming or has formed, I would ask that we take serious consideration into that. The 4-board fence expressed as an interest from the community, the 50-foot additional or not additional, but the undisturbed buffer. I think those are some of the larger ones that would, and there certainly are more, but, and I would also point out, I would ask that the staff take serious consideration of the concern over the toxic area that may or may not exist there. If there was a past case that came before us, I'd like to look at that case as well. It may have been a Fulton County case back in 2008.
No, we were a city then.
We were a city in 2008, but okay. So since we created in 2006, I guess we would have that to go back and look at as that case. Just ask that you do that as well. And if there are no other questions, I propose we close the hearing on this particular case. Any other? Okay, let's close the hearing. Thank you. And thank you to the members of the community who've chosen to come out this evening on this case. You came well prepared, and we encourage you to stay engaged. Thank you. And if you're not here to be a part of the next case, we just ask that you move your conversations to the outer lobby area.
No, we're still doing the meeting. Sorry. Is anybody who has not submitted a card for the next item, please bring it up to the table, please. Yeah, they do sub on it, yeah, and they do, they're, yeah. Oh, okay.
Not a red one, unfortunately. Can I have it, please?
Right, but it's very typical for this area that they just stop.
Well, this is a discussion here, so if there's anything else that you feel wasn't addressed, I'll give you my email. Please send that to me, and so that as we review this, because I get to sign off on this, it has to be all our regular.
Some sidewalks there that's not technically theirs, but, yeah, we don't require, especially, everybody wants everything to be rural and there's sidewalks to nowhere, so, yeah.
So that's the process.
Yeah.
So, but if you certainly, I'm not going to be signing this immediately tomorrow, so if you have any other concerns.
If you can take, like, just, if you have a camera phone, we don't have any extra ones, so, or you can, contact them.
We're not talking yet. I know, but I'm just saying. No, it's not for discussion, because I haven't seen anything. I can't comment. Since you brought it up, I was asking. Yeah, no, but it may never happen. So we can't comment on something that is just. And that's fine, but since they brought it up, I thought. But if they do bring it in, we will have another public meeting just like this. You'll be invited to come. Okay, so say those words.
Ready to begin the next case?
I think Chris.
For those of you who are just in conversation on the past case, we just ask that you move that conversation to the lobby area, please. And begin the next case.
Okay, we're going to go ahead and get started for the next case. Again, I think I have one comment card for this item. Okay. Yeah, so we need to start.
Yeah, we're on the second right now.
Sorry.
And then just.
This is rare. It's only
Okay, I think we're ready to go. Okay.
Usually
They'll close the doors and then. Like herding cats.
Are we on? We on?
We didn't make a soundproof lobby, so it's like, yeah. Anyway, so the next item, or preliminary plat, is called Crabapple Corners. We would, actually, anyway, we're going to discuss that as far as names. So this is located at the approximate southeast corner of Charlotte Drive and Mayfield Road, just east of the new Milton Library. It's the owner or the applicant. The applicant is Stonewalk Companies, LLC, Mr. Robert Forrest. It contains 1.553 acres. It currently has a single-family home. It is proposed for 7 townhomes, 3 apartment flats, and 8,936 square feet of commercial. It contains 9 units per acre, and that's based on acquiring additional transfer development rights. It's currently zoned within the Crabapple Form-Based Code as T4 open. This is the site preliminary plat. I do believe that you all have a revised version that dealt with some issues with the parking calculations. As you can see, there's 2 sets of townhomes, 3 units, and then 4 units together along Charlotte. The entrance is as close as possible to be directly across from the library entrance. It meets the requirements of the transportation engineer. Up front toward the proposed roundabout on the corner is a restaurant with a proposed rooftop dining area, and then the building to the east is proposed for the retail. With that said, based on the submitted site plans and supplemental information, the proposed preliminary plat meets the requirements of the applicable city codes as they pertain to development of this property. So I did not say that on the other one, but that was true as well. So with that said, we can have the applicant come up to make any other comments that he would like to make before we hear from the public.
Okay, thank you, Robin.
My name's Rob Forrest. I reside at 512 Branyon Trail, right over here, backing up to Crabapple Road. So I'm a local citizen, been here for city limits of 5 years, and then before that was in Alpharetta, so I moved all the way about 2 miles over here because I like the walkability. And having been here, I've developed retail centers up on Windward and other places in Alpharetta, downtown Alpharetta, 44 Milton Avenue. I did that as a mixed-use building, the first building that was built back in 2000s, since probably 20 years before. And I do a lot of stuff now in town, mixed-use developments and stuff like that. So I eat what I do. So I live, like I said, I've lived here. I was in the first townhouse that was, backs up to the retail at where 850 is today. First townhome on the left, the yellow one. So my parking lot, or the parking lot of the retail, was about 8 feet from the side of my house. So I'm very, very cognizant of mixed use, Crabapple, and the traffic on Crabapple or Mayfield Road versus Charlotte or some of the other roads. So I've lived at 24 hours a day, 7 days a week for almost 5 years, and before that being down on Mid-Broadwell in a subdivision. So I've been in a subdivision that like we abut next door, and I've been living in the mixed use, and frankly, I love it. But there are some things that being in a mixed use that you have to be attentive to, and so we've really tried to do that with this plan. Typically, this is a smaller development than what I normally do, but because I live here in my backyard and I live, breathe, and whatnot, mixed use, and I love it, I wanted to do something in my backyard, basically. So this is a little smaller than what we normally do. And I don't build townhouses. I have done condos, for-sale condos, and apartments, but I've not done townhomes. These will be done by a builder. I've got several of them that are friends of mine. So I haven't picked one of them as the horse to go with on this, but want to make sure it's a little bit nicer product than what I lived in. I've got 3 kids, divorced, getting married, 3 kids, and a 3-bedroom, 2.5-bath townhouse. That's why I had to move to a bigger house over here. Wasn't quite what I needed. So I don't know if you've seen, I think you guys have already seen what Taylor Morrison's doing across the street. I think this is a little bit higher end product. And it's going to be much more in keeping and matching the library, which I think is beautiful. And I'll also throw in there the Stan is nice enough to leave me the house, and it's got all that nice stone that the library tried to match. I don't know if you guys remember that, but I think the library tried to match the stone house. We're actually recycling all of that off. So that stone will be back onto the mixed-use buildings that you see here. And with that, I'll just open it up for questions or comments.
Okay.
Thank you.
So I do have one public comment right now, and it's Dennis Durante.
Good evening. Dennis Durante, 4050 St. Michel Lane, Alpharetta, Georgia. It's on the plat here, it's where you see the dumpster. That's my lot there, and it abuts right up to the property line of where the new development's going. So I have a couple of concerns that I would like them to, the developer to address. One of them being that I've had rat boxes along that fence for 12 years. Now we've put the dumpster right on the property line, so we're going to feed them a lot easier. But I'd like to see that moved to another location so it's not right up on my fence. That's number one. Number two, if it were possible to put Lelands along that buffer, that 10-foot buffer, which would give me some privacy because the side of the house with my master bedroom is right there. So with lights and noise and stuff like that, I would appreciate if they would consider putting some kind of a Leland strip there. Now, down further as you go towards Mayfield, on the inside of the property, that other resident that shares this cul-de-sac with me and abuts this property actually has Lelands. So it is a excellent buffer, because if you're looking towards the construction site, you don't see anything. So just adding Lelands down the side of that buffer on the plot here would actually take care of that problem immediately. I had some concern about, when I saw a rooftop on top of a restaurant, the noise level would be a concern, and I have no idea what's going in there, whether it's a bar or something like that, or whether it's going to be very noisy and how late it's going to be noisy and this type of thing. And that would be pretty much it from my standpoint. I think the Leland buffer takes care of a lot of problems. It gives privacy between the two properties. It also will diffuse the, I think I calculated that 60% of the parking spaces are down where my property abuts, so there's going to be all the lights, from cars and stuff, and the Lelands actually takes care of a multitude of problems. And then the only other thing is that dumpster, if it could be resituated somewhere else.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
All right.
Okay. Would you like to take a minute and address the concerns of the community?
Yeah, these are all things, again, being a practical person, I've lived there. I've had those issues. The dumpsters have to go somewhere on these. The dumpsters are, where I live, they're kind of on either side, so they're not right where I am, but my neighbors have had them, they're much closer than this. That townhomes that are at the kind of the Indigo end, that dumpster back is probably, 10, 15 feet from their deck. And so it's very, very close. In this one reason for this is it's in the corner. There's a cemetery back here, and his house is kind of more up. I can't really point at it on there, but it's this is kind of the very back piece of his property, so it's in the backyard, farther away from his house, and then it's also as far away we could get it from our own residential unit. So small site, trying to figure out where to put trash. You got to put it somewhere. You don't want to put it up on the traffic circle. So we tried to accommodate that, and we'll work with staff on ideas, suggestions, and him just to how to address that, or way to do that. I will add, nobody's said this, but we are going to make sure that the trash is never picked up at after hours or anything like that, because I've heard the beep, beep, beep up and down up here at 3 in the morning. It's very loud. To address the buffer between the two, it actually sits right now, if you look at the property, and again, we haven't done the whole elevations and the whole site work, but right now it sits about 4 to 5 feet below the fence line, and there's already a fence there that goes all the way along the property on this entire property line. And if we can keep that elevation down, hopefully that'll be below grade, so none of that light spilling over into the cul-de-sac or into that neighborhood. And we'll work with staff and the neighbor on planting. I agree with Leland's. I don't know if that works with the code, but again, backing up to Crabapple Road, there's, I think, 6 Leland's in the backyard of my house, plus a few that are on the other side of the fence, and they work pretty well. I'm glad they were there, and they were planted back in 2013, not today, but we'll put, again, work with staff on whatever and the neighbor on that. And finally, on the, as far as addressing the rooftop, that is as far away from any of the residents except for our own that we can get it. It's right up on the traffic circle. Traffic circle already have some of its own noise, and the building next door is 2 stories, as well. Those townhomes will be 3 stories basically. So we feel a lot of that will be shielding, and also from the noise he gets. Right now, this is a field. If you've seen it, it's a field. So car noise, road noise, anybody from the library, anybody going up and down Mayfield Road, right now that noise and lights and everything are just spilling across that field to his house. I think, again, having lived in both situations, that the having those houses, the townhomes here, will actually be more of a buffer and will help that. So I'm hoping we'll be really good neighbors, and hopefully he'll like what we're doing.
Can I ask you one quick question about the dumpster? Is the dumpster for the townhomes, the restaurant, and the retail center?
Yet to be determined. We have to work with that. It definitely is for the commercial and the residents up above that. As far as the townhomes, we're not sure if they want their individual, their
Trash.
individual ones.
Okay.
Right, or if not, we would be okay with everybody using it. Just have to work with a builder and whatnot to see what's preferred.
Okay. It just seems like the restaurant's going to have to drop their trash and everything all the way down to that other corner. And if they have grease pits, it just seems like it's far away from the restaurant, which is probably the worst trash generator, I guess.
It is, and this lot, I don't know if you notice on here, but the parking is actually gravel. That's to just help from stormwater and everything else, and also just to keep the feel of crabapple. So part of that's having a trash truck go over farther in. We would have to pave farther in because they can't go on the gravel, if that makes any sense. So that's another kind of a trade-off we'll work with everybody on, but yeah.
I had another question based on his comment too. So just so I understand the plat design, because at the top of the property there's a 10-foot setback, but right here where the dumpster is that 10-foot setback doesn't go all the way down there, right?
It does.
It is? And so there's a 3-foot minimum rear setback?
I think that's the side and a 10 on the, is that correct? I think the 3 on the side and 10 on the front, I believe.
Yeah, the sides are 3. But I think they just provide, setback for what, the dumpster? Not sure what the question is.
So, no, because what he had mentioned about it, that this property, there would be a 10-foot setback, but looking at the plat, I don't see a 10-foot setback here. It says a 3-foot setback. There's a 10-foot setback on the side where the restaurant is.
Yeah, if you look at that's 10 feet. That's a 10-foot strip running all the way down that common property. The whole east line is 10 feet.
It's
all the way down.
All the way, basically
all the way
the
down.
whole property.
Not around the perimeter, but
Not around but on their property.
along
so like
the
that
east
whole
property line adjacent to St. Michel is the 10 feet that they're providing. There's no building, so they don't have to have a certain, we don't have any buffer requirements, and the minimum setback requirement is 3 feet, so they could actually push their parking lot 3 feet, but apparently with the grade change, that doesn't even make sense to do that. So they're providing the 10 feet along the east property line. I don't know if that's answering your question or not, or making it.
Yeah, I think 3 feet's a requirement. We could push everything 3 feet, but we chose to do 10 feet there. Again, if you go out there and look at it, if you're standing at the library, you'll see the property kind of goes almost like a hill with the cul-de-sac being a little higher in the middle. And again, until we do the whole site work design, we're going to be below that grade. So coming off of that also gives a buffer. And there's also some trees that are right up on that fence that we didn't want to disturb. Not big trees, but bigger. They're already there, so why not leave those and then just augment it with more?
And just to let you know, we'll certainly work with the city arborist. We hear the issue about the buffering and the screening. And so we can work with the arborist to indeed make sure that we plant that in a fashion that really meets the needs of the neighbors.
Ralph, Kathy touched on it, but the entrance, I'm not sure I understood. She said it would be with the library?
Right, so the entrance exit on Charlotte, that entrance for the library, this entrance is skewed a little bit. It's a little offset, but it's enough for our transportation engineer to be happy, because we always want entrances to be right across the street from one another.
Oh, that's fine.
So it's not perfect, but it's enough to keep the safety factor there.
So they're going to be the restaurant there, that they would then come in that way into the restaurant?
That's correct. Yeah, there's one
only one
entrance, and then if you see right behind the townhomes, there's an alley that comes up there, and then you continue straight and you go into the gravel lot for the commercial and the lofts.
Okay.
And we also hope, Fred, this is going to be a walkable community, so we hope that people will also walk too.
Okay.
Is the parking for the townhomes inside? Do they have garages, or are they reliant upon those pads?
They're inside. They're inside, and then those pads are deep enough that they can also park behind them.
I think this is a question for staff. I think some of the calculations here are reflective of a framework for parking that you've presented to this body last year, late last year, and on Monday presented to the working session of council.
Correct.
But it's not yet approved.
Right.
If for whatever reason it's not approved, is this parking configuration and the number of parking spaces supplied here consistent with existing code?
It will have to be.
We'll have to figure it out.
Yeah, it will have to meet the existing code if indeed the new code does not pass. Absolutely. Okay. Which is for a restaurant, it's stricter, as you know from.
That's right.
The discussion the other day.
Okay. Thank you.
Could you describe to us the residential lobby area? I'm not seeing the elevations. I'm just curious about that and sort of its function.
Well, it's the residents. There's 3 residential units that are above the retail on that one building, and if you look over here, the first 6 spots are actually kind of a covered parking, reserved for those people. Okay. And then there's a covered way for them to come in, walk over to it's basically you come around the side of the building and then you go upstairs from that side. So it's not. It sounds like a lobby, but it's not really. It's more of an access point for
access area.
Yeah, exactly. Okay. It's enclosed. It's part of the residential area for them, only for them to get into.
Okay, so closed access for everyone else.
Exactly. Yeah. Excellent.
And then I did have a couple of concerns on the layout of the parking in relation to the other uses. In that there's no clear pedestrian path. You've got the bio retention area. Otherwise, it appears people have to walk through in between cars and parking spaces. Can you address that?
Well, yeah. If you look up here, basically anyone that parks in the lot, and again, I don't have. There's not a. Let me see. Is there a pointer? Hey, can you all see that?
Hey.
Have a screen?
You can see the pointer.
Okay,
yes.
Good. So this whole rectangle is underneath the gravel, so you wouldn't see that. So it's just This is all one big gravel area, and then this is the sidewalk area where it butts up to the parking here, and then this area right here. We haven't shown it. There's sidewalks right here right now, but we could add some more right in there, and we'd work with staff on that.
Just think some pedestrian access would make sense. I mean, over time, people are just going to walk through the grass or your bio retention area.
Right.
So then it just creates more kind of a maintenance issue. And are you going to have access from the retail building and the restaurant to the sidewalk out front along the right of way?
Yes, absolutely. We're not showing that on this one yet because there's still. The traffic circle is a circle right now. It's
right.
We don't even have a design, so that's kind of a placeholder. But once we do, we absolutely. That's we want it to be walkable, and across the way, you got a library and everything else. We want everybody to be active. Street level activity, definitely.
Okay, that's
so
great.
Primary access would be on the circle side, not on the parking lot side, to both the restaurant as well as the retail space.
If you're walking, you would come to it from the front or from the sidewalks out on the roads. If you're coming from the parking, you'd come over here. You'd be obviously from the backside from the parking, much like you would see at like Old Blind Dog, for example. You see people walking up and down the street and going in that way, and then where you park is kind of behind the building, but it's also it's kind of a four-sided building, which is what these are. It's very similar.
Right. I mean, architecture has to be done that way. But
absolutely.
But the primary access would be circle side with a secondary access, or on the parking lot side?
Once we get, I don't know yet, to be honest with you. It may be tenant driven also.
I was just going to say you may get some pushback from the townhome community or the resident or the apartment community if the waiting area, if it's pouring into the street, would be within their living area.
Right. Absolutely. So again, it's, as we go also to tenants, we haven't leased any yet. We have interest, but we haven't done anything yet till we get past this, obviously. They'll kind of dictate some of that, that'll kind of change around a little bit.
Well, then I'm sure you know this better than I do, being in the industry, that sense of place and the feeling of a vibe and a buzz, you want to have that on the visible street side. So that
absolutely.
That's a place I need to go.
Absolutely. Mm-hmm.
The last thing I had is I am in support of providing some type of landscaping to the neighbors. I know that it's not necessarily required in Crabapple, but that's a different product that was built at a different time.
Absolutely. Well, like I said, I moved from that product to the other product that I'm doing here, and I've built different things of this. So that's one reason you see that there. And if you guys go out there and look, you'll see the kind of the topography change. And like I said, right up on the fence line, there's some trees and some other things that we'd like to just kind of leave up there and then add as we come down the hill.
Thank you.
Smeet, any additional questions? Fred? Mark? Chris? Ron? Good. Okay, I've got a couple. So when I guess a simple one first. The fact that it references the carport that's there, is that the existing one that's on the property today?
No. That's there's nothing going to be left on the property except for the stone off the building and then anything we can recover. We've been talking to a couple different restaurants. There's a chicken house back where the back basically where the driveway is. We're actually going to try to recycle the metal roof and some of that stuff because it's hard. Otherwise, I have to go out and buy it. And we already have it on site. So I did the development. I took down the Copeland's restaurant about 10 years ago over by North Point Mall, Copeland's and Hops and Chicago Pizza. We recycled about 70% of those buildings. So I learned what you can and can't do. But all the stone and stuff we used back on site. We actually brought a grinder in that case to do the foundations. This one, there's not a lot there, but we're going to try to recycle it and then make it available or give it to basically recycle it. No reason to throw it away. Cost me money to throw it away where people will actually use it and put it in restaurants today, which is great. So,
okay. But so then what is the purpose of a single carport?
It's the whole thing. It's actually 6 cars, so there's 2 per unit.
Oh, so the dotted line area is actually a reflection of multiple It's just carport area.
That's exactly right. There's 3 residential units above the retail, and there's 2 parks per though, just like the townhomes.
So these are dedicated just to them?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
Closed.
Not closed.
Architecturally consistent with the intended?
We would, absolutely work with staff and everything on that. We have to go through design review and all that on that.
Okay, so not like necessarily like a pole building?
No. Okay. Not at this price point.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, thank you for that. Robin, question for you. So obviously, in the fact that we're talking about the recycling of the existing structure, there is no requirement for historical value to that.
Right. We only have 2 buildings in the whole city that could be kept from tearing down. But it is on the 1996 historic list, but there's really nothing that we can do to keep it from being torn down. But we do appreciate them trying to reuse it and implement it in the development, so we applaud that.
All right, thank you. Thinking back to our discussion at the last Planning Commission meeting about, I think it was the Crescent property over in the Deerfield area, as it related to apartments. And this is T4. T4 apartments is a permitted.
So the Crabapple's a little different in that a few years ago we implemented, it's a actual.
It's permit for apartments, correct?
It's not a use. It's not apartments because we've allowed a use that's 2 different types. So give me a second, and I will give you the description of it. Under, we call it loft apartment, and it's by right. And so there's a maximum number that you can do that loft apartment. So, for instance, next month you're going to be seeing a use permit for apartments as well as senior housing because they need 43 units. So that exceeds what, and let me look real quickly to tell you what the number is for loft apartments. So we wanted to give the flexibility for vertical mixed use so that you could have lofts without going through the whole apartment, scenario. And this is exactly what that is. So let me look real quick to give you that information.
Actually, while you're looking for that, Robin, I can ask
Sure.
Rob another question. Rob, the 3 apartments above the retail space, with that kind of square footage, that's about 2,200 square foot per apartment, if that's the approximate.
It's about 2,000 because there's, access and things like that. That's correct.
And are those single story, or is this a is this retail first floor, 2-level apartments above it, or
one level? It's one level, even though there's some architectural that's over by the other side, and we haven't designed that yet. That might have a loft inside, or it may just be really high ceilings. Kind of like where this kind of goes up. Haven't designed that yet, but we're limited to 3 units, and we don't want to go 4,000 square feet, or if we started making them 2 stories, that would be 4,000 square footers, and that's just too big. I've been a divorcee for 5 years, and I needed to stay in the school district, and it's impossible to find a place that's nice and that's roomy, and that's part of the reason for these, to be honest with you. Fact of life, people get divorced and they need to stay in the school district, and this gives them an option, hopefully.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, single. It's a 2-story building.
Right.
First floor is retail. Right. Second floor is apartments. 3 distinct apartments. Right. So, Robin, in the proposed preliminary plat description, where it refers to non-residential development, that's basically referring to the commercial.
Correct.
That's just another way.
You could do either office or retail. It's a flex space, so whatever would in the form-based code. And this T4 open, you're allowed to do either. So.
Right. And at this point, you're contemplating retail, not office space?
Correct. It's all up to who comes and what, it's demand driver. Right. So whoever winds up coming.
Well, our form-based code doesn't dictate what goes inside. It only really dictates what it looks like outside.
Right.
Okay, thank you for that. Robin, going back to the discussion about I guess maybe you've already answered. My question was going to be residential condo use versus...
Okay, so I have it in front of me. So the definition for loft apartment is an apartment located in a building where the first story is used for non-residential functions or residential lobbies, leasing, fitness. So it was a neighborhood apartment. We have actually another category that it could be... an apartment that is not loft apartment and is located in a development where the total combined number of apartment dwelling units does not exceed 30. And at this point in time, when we talk about apartment, we do not speak to, we only speak to the use, and we don't speak to whether it's for sale or for lease. Mm-hmm. So, if Rob wanted to go ahead and sell them or to rent them, it doesn't matter under this scenario. So.
Okay, thank you. The TDR component of this, I guess it's a question for both of you. Have we identified the sending area at this point? Have we identified the TDR's availability? Or is that still hypothetical?
Currently, at this moment in time, there's only one seller, although there are a couple other people working on acquiring at least one other that's very close to getting TDR. So it's really up to the developer to decide whom to buy it from and at what price. So
okay, and so the TDR requirement to make this happen, how much? So is it the TDR is going to allow for more commercial or allow for more residential?
Either way, it doesn't matter.
Okay, so how much additional TDR square footage are we actually acquiring to make this work than what is currently zoned for in T4?
So in T4, I can tell you what is...
Or is that the right question? Is T4 the designation, or is it the Crabapple commercial area?
No, it's T4, you're correct. So by right, you get 5 units per acre. So obviously, it's pretty obvious about residential. If you wanted to put 5 units without buying TDRs, you could put 5 houses or whatever.
Yeah,
but you're going up to 9 units per acre, I believe, right? You're going to the max.
Right. Yep.
And so, and then with commercial, he has the proposal of 7, and then that leaves him I mean, you could probably go through the calculations better than I do, but basically whatever is left over that he needs to purchase, then he's going to go and purchase those units.
So this is sort of still new territory for us.
Right.
We haven't done that many TDRs. So I don't know if you're prepared to answer a question like this tonight, but I think that's something that I would look forward to us being able to answer in the future, and that is, if there is required additional square footage, whether it's commercial or residential, what does that look like in terms of what TDR requirements are going to be? What is it that makes the math work for that? If we need 1,000 square feet of
and
receiving,
I'm not the expert.
What does that look like on the sending?
Yeah. So what I would suggest is Michelle McIntosh Ross is the planner who is the most up on all the TDRs and can get all the little intricacies, and she has spreadsheets. I would be happy to ask her to do maybe a little review with the Planning Commission, since this is something that may come up more often as you review things.
Right.
I wouldn't recommend it for the next meeting because it's a very heavy meeting, but I'll talk to her and maybe we can arrange a time that you all can be trained on that.
I would actually, encourage that be a measurement that's included in the packet requirements, so that when we're talking about that we really understand what the trade-off is to the community, good or bad. We know that when we talked, and we're using Crabapple as the example here, obviously, because this case, and this is not necessarily just related to what you're asking us to look at tonight. And so we know what it was contemplated for when we did the original form-based code, and some of the square footages that it looked like, and the densities, et cetera. And now, to achieve some of these particular developments, we know that it's basically, without calling it that, a variance that's being requested and or granted based on the availability of TDRs. So I would love a chance to understand what that looks like on the receiving end. It's going to be X number of square feet in additional to above what was contemplated before, so we have a calculated measurement of that. And then what does that look like from the sending area as well? I'd also like to know if, as soon as possible in the process, where it's coming from, where the sending area is, so that you know what we're getting back in that trade. If we know, and I'll give the example. Remember the case that we had before us that was up at like Cox and Arnold Mill, I think is where it was, where there was a big debate about what was or wasn't going to be able to be done there based on the request from the developer at that time. And I think it was eventually denied based on...
Right, the overall form-based code was tabled because of discrepancies on what kind of density the property owners wanted.
Right.
Was higher than what staff was willing to provide. So
that may, and I'm speaking hypothetically, but use that as the example. So if that particular developer who wanted a higher density for that form-based code to represent X there, if that's never going to happen, that landowner may decide, hey, I'm going to be a sending area. And for what was there, because if it's not going to be granted for more in the foreseeable future, and they want to get a yield off their land, they may determine then that there's a value to becoming a sending area. It'd be nice to be able to say, okay, great, that corner that was contemplated for a higher density development of some degree is now coming off the map for future development because it's been designated as a sending area.
Well, to be honest, somebody who owns those parcels around there, they're holding on for dear life and hoping and praying. So I don't really see
but don't take that one
being
don't necessarily take that as the example, because we know that that's what they're looking for. But hypothetically, it'd be nice to know, speaking hypothetically, it'd be nice to know if there are areas that are becoming sending areas, so that we know as we're contemplating the future land use plan of Milton, that what was at one point contemplated in the land use, it's no longer going to be a commercial area of any kind, because it suddenly became a sending area rather than a receiving area, or no change where it would allow them some commercial development.
So I think it would be pretty simple to provide a map of where the potential sending areas, because they've already been designated. And there's multiple properties by one property owner. and then there's some trying to get on board. So that definitely is something that we can provide to you, that you get an idea where it's coming from. Now, wherever, I don't know exactly what, in the end, which property it's going to come from. That's between,
Right,
the buyer and the
developer
seller. And I will definitely talk to Michelle about trying to get like a 411 session about the TDRs and how they're calculated. And I don't know if Rob could comment any about what he's gotten from Michelle as far as what the TDRs look like, as far as, you're not really priced, but whatever she told you that you need. I think it's pretty straightforward in his case, so.
Yeah, and I've got a friend of mine. I say a friend; it's an acquaintance in the business that has some. I think it's probably the same person you're talking about. So, I've got a pretty good handle on what those are going to cost me, because I've talked to them for not only this but other times over a couple of years probably now on TDRs. And one reason I'm big on this is where density is supposed to go, and if we can take it out of someplace else and protect some of what makes Milton pretty, right? That's one reason I live here. This is what this was set up to do. So that's one reason we kind of maxed this out. We didn't have to throw condos up there. We didn't have to throw something up there. But part of it is, this is where density is supposed to be, and it needs to be a place, right? It needs to be walkable. And you got to have enough of it there. But then if you can take some from somewhere else, that's a pretty good trade. I think that's why TDR system's there.
That's what it's for.
Right.
Yeah, I'd just like to make sure that we understand where it's coming from, so we get some either choreography or expectation of what we're taking from, so we don't necessarily deplete something that was contemplated, or maybe it's appropriate to totally deplete an area, so we get what you just talked about, maybe an area that would have been developed at some point stays rural. Okay, thanks for that. We've already addressed some of my other ones. Just a note on the plat, Robin, this may be a question for you. It says that this is the gravel parking lot area pending revision to the parking requirements. So that reference to the parking requirements is the 3.5 measure that we're making?
Correct, yeah, that's going to be heard on Monday.
There wasn't any other requirement that we're looking at. It's just that calculation part.
Correct, yeah.
Okay, thank you. The last question I've got is, I know for another part of the Crabapple development, we experienced some significant pushback from our Alpharetta neighbors about the fact that we had not contemplated buffers with our creation of the Crabapple plan. And it doesn't appear that this one has much of a buffer other than just the minimal requirements here. Or has that been addressed when we lifted the moratorium before based on adjustments we were going to make or not make to the Crabapple plan?
So we did not, once it was, I think there was, the council directed staff not to really pursue any further changes to the Crabapple to provide buffers. So what is here is the 10 feet is what Rob has provided for them. It's not
it's consistent
in
with
code.
The plan, but
he
it's
could
not
go to his parking lot straight, almost like 3 feet or whatever. So that's where we are on that. And I do believe, other than the other stone house on the other end of Crabapple, that's the only other commercial piece that abuts Alpharetta. So.
And we've heard from a landowner that's immediately adjacent on, I guess in the map orientation, the south end of the property. I don't recall right off the top of my head. I know what's on the Mayfield Road area, but what's in the depth of the property as you get to, coming along the property line going south towards the dumpster? Is that residential over there?
On the other side, that's his lot.
Yeah, that's
there's a cul-de-sac. If you see where the line is that the sewer comes through, that's basically the center of a cul-de-sac.
Okay.
Here, I can use my pointer here. So this is the center of the cul-de-sac. His house sits, there's one house that sits like right about in here, and there's another house that's right about in here. And so this would be his back. The back here is the backyard, and here there's a fence line that runs along this, and then this is a driveway that goes back to the cemetery, which is just off the page here. So there's a couple acre, 3 acre cemetery back here. So, basically a field, Yeah. And I'm sure that's where the critters are coming from. That and probably some from what we're going to stir up over here, getting, probably some in this area, in this lot right now.
Okay. All right. Any other questions from the table?
Nope.
All right. Well, thank you again. As we stated in the earlier case, our comments and recommendations are not binding, but we appreciate the work that you've already done with staff and encourage you to continue to work closely with them. Ask that you give consideration to those concerns expressed from the community this evening, and thank you for your diligence on this.
Great. I appreciate your time. Thank you.
Okay, so that's the closing of that case. Robin?
So the next items are text amendments that staff is requesting both of them to be deferred to February 28th, where we're going to marry up the additional related amendments that have to do with lodging or hotels. So RZ 17-12, text amendment to Article 19, Crabapple Form-Based Code 1.6.4.b as it relates to lodging.
Okay. Is there anyone who takes exception to the recommendation of staff asking for a deferral? And if not, may I have a motion for deferral, please?
I'll make a motion to defer RZ 17-12 to the February 28th Planning Commission meeting.
Okay. May I have a second?
Second.
Okay. Is there any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay, motion's unanimous. Okay, similar discussion on RZ 17-13. Staff is asking for deferral. Is there any questions or comments from staff, or anybody accept that? If not, may I have a motion, please?
I'll make a motion to defer RZ 17-13 to the February 28th Planning Commission meeting.
Okay.
I'll second that.
Thank you. Is there any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, motion carries. Okay, any additional items for discussion this evening before we adjourn? I have one, but anybody else have anything? Okay. Robin, the topic I want to bring up again tonight just has to do with these IAM type meetings. And I think tonight was probably one of the better discussions we've had because of the significance of the attendance by the community. And it sounds like, certainly in the first case, there was some significant work being done by the developer in concert with those requests being made by the members of the community. The fact that we are still not our recommendations or concerns are not binding in any way, I would like to encourage staff to entertain that with members of mayor and council again, so that when the community is invested the time that they have, as exemplified by tonight's action, where they're here in significant quantity, they've invested time and energy to come prepared for the hearing. It's just, in my mind, for them to walk away without any firm recommendations that require a particular action by the developer in response to that, other than simply a referral by us to take some action. I'd like to see it more binding, or a particular action is required based on the outcome, where the Planning Commission takes a vote on these are the 5, 6, 7 things or 2 things that require an interaction by the developer and staff based on the things that we heard. And just propose that for your consideration and ask for some feedback on that, either from the mayor and council at this point. I know there was debate about that at one point, where the Planning Commission was going to be granted those responsibilities to be able to come away with making a recommendation. I would just like that to have a chance to be revisited with the new council.
Speak to Kathy and to Steve and transmit those thoughts. So.
Great, thank you. All right, any additional comments, questions? If not, I'd like a motion for adjournment.
So moved.
Okay, any discussion?
Was it Mark that you did the second?
I did the second.
I'm sorry, it was, okay, Ron?
But it doesn't matter.
That's fine, I just can't hear very well sometimes, so you have to kind of yell it out. Okay.
Motion for adjournment, please signify by saying aye. 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 Opposed? Meeting's adjourned.